So I'm letting everybody in now.
Welcome everybody to today's session on Subaward and the expanded clearinghouse. So before we start this session, I'm going to go over a couple of Zoom reminders for everyone. So if you experience any technical issues, please call 1-888-799-9666 and choose option 2. Your audio will be connected through your computer or a call-in number. If you experience any issues with your audio, just send me a message and we can call you in. Submit any questions at any time in the chat box, which is the toolbar below. When you are called on to ask your question, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and then mute yourself again and turn off your camera when you're done speaking. This recording, the slides, and the session summaries will be posted to our website at thefdp.org. And now I'll pass it off to Denise Moody to start this session.
Thank you, Sarah. So as Sarah said, we really welcome anybody to ask any questions or share any comments in the chat box. And also, if you are comfortable enough to want to speak out to the group, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. And so I'm Denise Moody from the Boston VA Research Institute. I serve as one of the Expanded Clearinghouse Subcommittee co-chairs, along with Amanda Haymaker from Purdue University and Robert Prentice from Yale University. And today we thought it would be very useful to collaborate and do a joint session with the Subaward Subcommittee, since we've been working so closely together in many areas of subrecipient monitoring. So in the next slide, we show the brief agenda, where we're going to start out just giving you some brief updates about the expanded clearinghouse, hand it off to Alice and Tyra to give you an update on the subrecipient monitoring tools working group initiatives, and then end with the Subaward subcommittee updates. And then at the very end of our session, we can encourage everybody to stay because the Subawards group will share who their new co-chair is going to be. So the next slide. Just for those who may not be as familiar with the clearinghouse, it is an FDP supported online repository. This is the URL to that clearinghouse. And this is different from the conflict of interest clearinghouse, which is also another FDP supported data repository. This particular clearinghouse can be launched from our homepage, from the FDP homepage. And it includes institutional profile information that's quite detailed. Anything from certification, assurances, expiration dates, audit responses, et cetera. And the intention of the clearinghouse, it's been in place for several years now, is to replace the administrative burden of customized subrecipient commitment forms or letters of intent each time that we're collaborating with one another, at least for those who are part of the clearinghouse. So in the next slide, we'll show you the list of subcommittee members in this slide. So the next one, Sarah. So we have several subcommittee members. We are a very busy group. We want to give a shout out and thanks to Webb Brightwell. He just recently moved from Harvard over to Huron Consulting. So now he's a friend of the FDP. He gave many years of volunteerism to not only our committee, but in other committees at the FDP. So thank you so much, Webb, for all that you've done over the years. And we want to welcome Emily Lacey from the University of Texas, Dallas, and Jackie Lucas from the Beckman Research Institute, City of Hope, who just recently joined our subcommittee. And also just really recognize Chris Renner from Vanderbilt University Medical Center, who developed the clearinghouse and provides all of our systems support. And then finally, Jennifer Rodas from University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Carrie McHugh from the Research Foundation for the State University of New York, who work with Robert really closely to review every profile update prior to its publication. So there's a lot that happens behind the scenes. So we want to just recognize everyone here. Thank you. And the next, so we also reached a recent milestone as of Friday. We have finally surpassed the 300 mark. We have 301 expanded clearinghouse profiles. This includes all 217 FDP members, as well as 80 non-FDP members. So this is a huge milestone a couple years ago, and so now we're at 301. So it's quite an accomplishment. We're really proud of that. And in the next slide, what you'll see is a list of the various cohorts throughout the years. And each quarter, we send out an invitation to non-FDP institutions who have a desire to be a part of the clearinghouse. And right now, we are taking invitations. We are taking interest from those who are based in the those institutions who are based in the U.S. and undergo a single audit at this time. But Alice and Tyler will talk about some collaboration that we're doing to try to consider expansion of the clearinghouse in the future to include non-single audit entities. At the end of the section of our slides, we'll show you the website where those of you who are attending this session and you're not in the clearinghouse and you fall into that category and wish to be a part of the clearinghouse, there is a cost associated with it, but if you have an interest, we encourage you to submit your invitation. The next round of invitations will go out around June 1st, and we send an invitation out every quarter. And the next slide. So I'm going to hand it off to Robert and just let you know, in the January meeting session, what we did was we just did a very quick Zoom poll as we were proposing or considering changes to our audit questions in the clearinghouse, and also the use of customized subrecipient commitment forms, whether you're being asked to fill one out or whether you're requesting your subrecipients complete one, even if you're part of the clearinghouse. And based on the results of that Zoom poll, we decided to launch a survey throughout the listserv. So Robert is going to share those results.
Thank you, Denise. So what you see here are some of the changes that we had proposed to make to the single audit section of the expanded clearinghouse. And the intention behind these changes was to focus the questions on just findings within the R&D cluster, which are important for risk assessment, and to assist with the evaluation of findings by providing the page number within an audit where the findings are described. And the feedback on these changes, as with the polls we ran in January, was generally positive. Next slide, please. But since that survey, we've gotten some good news, which is that the General Services Administration will be taking over the operations of the Federal Audit Clearinghouse from the Census Bureau later this year. And they have expressed their intention to provide system-to-system access through an API, and in the longer term, better access to data about findings within audits. And that's something we're really interested in. We've decided to postpone the proposed updates to those audit questions so that we can coordinate those changes with the opportunities that may come from the new system. We don't want to be changing the audit questions year after year after year. They're a very important part of the website. Next slide, please. So on the issue of subrecipient commitment forms and institution-specific letters of intent, the survey gave us some more information on the sources of the problem. The two most common reasons why organizations are requiring them are auditors and institutional policies. This is not a surprise. This is definitely something the committee has heard as we've talked to individual organizations about their forms. And I think it's safe to say that this dynamic exists in every organization to some degree. There is excessive aversion to risk. There are policies and processes that linger after they're no longer useful. That's present everywhere. And so these may not go away entirely, those dynamics, but they can be minimized. And we have a group of organizations here that know how to do that. Some respondents indicated that the clearinghouse does not contain all of the entity information they need. And on that point, we're going to be working on adding some additional fields to the clearinghouse related to conflict of interest and in the slightly longer term, research security. And then some respondents said that they needed project-specific information that wasn't provided on the letter of intent. And to that, we have recently revised the FDP sample LOI to add some additional project-specific data elements. Next slide, please. And then this last survey question asks how often organizations were being asked by other clearinghouse participants to use forms. And what's interesting here and troubling is the difference in responses between the FDP members and the non-members who are participating in the clearinghouse. The answer rarely is the answer we would like to hear. And you can see there's a big difference there between the FDP members and the non-members. Now those non-members are paying an annual fee to participate in the clearinghouse, and they're doing so with the expectation that they will save time and money by foregoing the use of forms. And so when they're having to deal with forms, that's a real problem. And so I think this survey indicates that we need to take that very seriously. And so we will continue to work on the problem and we will report back on those efforts. And now I will turn things over to Amanda Haymaker.
So I'm just going to kind of quickly summarize some of the updates that we have recently completed. You may have seen in an email that was sent out that we did update the participation agreement. The intent of that update was just to specify that the Clearinghouse subcommittee can push out profile updates for system-wide enhancements. The most recent example of that was we were able to automate pushing out the UEI to all of your profiles. So that's the kind of thing that particular point would be used for. And as Robert just mentioned, the letter of intent and commitment form, we did update the sample on our website to include a few more project-specific fields that we were frequently seeing requests for and were frequently coming up as reasons why people were using different versions of their forms. Collaborations that we currently have ongoing. We're really excited on May 19th, next week. We, specifically Lynette and Pamela, who founded the Expanding Clearinghouse, will be presenting at the OMB Grants Innovation Exchange all about FDP and the Expanding Clearinghouse. We're really excited about that and hopeful that it will provide kind of a jumping off point for more of our federal partners to utilize the Clearinghouse. I know personally, I don't like filling out subcommitment type forms from federal agencies either. So that might open up some really good opportunities for us to engage with the federal, some of our federal partners with the Clearinghouse. And then as you're about to hear a lot more about, we've been partnering with the Subawards subcommittee on the subrecipient monitoring tools. So I'll leave that for them to give details on. Next slide, please. These are some future enhancement considerations, and Robert alluded a little bit to the first one, the conflict of interest certification. So this is also another collaboration. We've been talking with the COI subcommittee a little bit about how we can incorporate those certifications or address those certifications somehow between the two clearinghouses, and more to come on that to kind of tie all of that together. There are some fields we've been discussing removing. You can see those there. DUNS, obviously. The USDA registration expiration date is obsolete now, and we've had many requests about that one. So that is definitely on the list to be removed. And then the primary auditee contact person as well. We talked about the audit questions already as well. So you're up to speed on that, and more to come once that transition happens with GSA. Next slide, please. And then just some reminders. I like reminders because I was part of the Subawards subcommittee. We always had reminders. Keep your profile information up to date. The audit reports need to be updated as you get new ones. Any expiring certifications, your contacts as people leave your institution and new people come on, make sure those are being updated. If you're on this call and you don't know who's responsible for your profile, you can go out and take a look and see. And if they're no longer there, you can let us know and we'll help you work through changing that contact. Make sure your institutional letter of intent is really just asking for project-related information and not institutional information that can be found in the clearinghouse. And then also make sure that your institution is willing to accept your fellow Expanding Clearinghouse participants' letters. If they're of a slightly different format or look and feel, we want to make it easier on people, not provide or not push more work on them just to fit into a certain format. So those are our reminders. Next slide, please. And here's how you can reach us. Systems questions to the first email, general questions to the second. And also we mentioned the ability to join the clearinghouse. So if we have anyone on this call that is not an FDP member or not already a participant in the clearinghouse, you can fill out that Survey Monkey and get added to our wait list. So the next time that we send out invitations, you will receive one and be able to join. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the working group and Alice.
Thank you, Amanda. Tyra Darby-Lane from Northwestern University and myself, Alice Ruther from Columbia University, are the co-chairs for this newly created Subrecipient Monitoring Tools Working Group. We have presented our goals in the previous meeting in January, but now we have updated them to align more to what we are doing and we are trying to accomplish. And basically at this point, we're working in two main projects, which is the creation of the non-single audit entity profile and a survey that we are going to be launching. Next slide, please. Thank you. Originally, we had thought and envisioned that we were going to need 3 working groups, subgroups to work on these projects, but during our kickoff meetings, we determined that we only needed 2 subgroups to tackle these 2 main projects. So our work was line up in terms of creating the survey, and for the monitoring tools is devoting the time and efforts to the survey to determine the needs of the research administration community. And that's going to tell us what our priorities are in terms of the tools that we can edit or create. And we are going to talk more about that in a little bit. And then the profile subgroup is just is devoted to review the financial questionnaire and proposing the non-single audit entity profile. Next slide, please. So with that, I will turn to Tyra to talk about how we have been working on the subprofile subgroup. Tyra?
Hello, thank you, Alice. So we just wanted to provide you a few updates and a timeline for our work. As Alice mentioned, one of the subgroups is the profile subgroup under our working group. And our focus is on creating a NSAP, is what we've named it, the non-single audit profile for entities which are not subject to the single audit. And in this way, they will have a similar profile to what is in the expanded clearinghouse. However, it will be designed such that some of those questions that do not apply to non-single audit entities will not be there, and then other opportunities to add information that is largely from the financial questionnaire. So we are also reviewing the financial questionnaire, updating it, as well as leveraging the information that's in the financial questionnaire to include it as a part of the NSAP, should those entities agree to fill out the NSAP as opposed to the financial questionnaire. So we did our kickoff meetings back in December, early January. Again, we decided that we only needed 2 subgroups to take care of the work and the charge that was upon us. We did, the profile subgroup did create the profile, we reviewed the profile and the financial questionnaire, as well as drafted an NSAP, the non-single audit profile, and presented it to both the Subaward subcommittee and the expanded clearinghouse committee for feedback and approval. That happened between February and March. Early May, we did complete, May, we started the work on creating a PDF version of the NSAP. And what we're doing there is creating a PDF version, because most initially, as a part of the pilot that we're proposing, we're going to be sending out an invitation to these non-single audit entities, asking them to participate in the pilot of filling out the NSAP. We're in the process of drafting that invitation letter as well as creating that PDF version. And then we hope to launch our phase 1 of the pilot end of May, early June, with the approval of our colleagues at Subawards committee, etc. What we do want to do is to ensure that the non-single audit entities are able to complete this form and have it housed somewhere on the FDP website so that their information will be publicly available. However, later, based on the outcome of the phase 1 of the pilot, it will be determined whether or not there will be an actual platform created for those non-single audit profiles to have an actual expanded clearinghouse profile. So that information is to be determined, and we hope that we will be able to move into that work after next year when the phase 1 pilot ends. Around between June and September is when we do hope to gather all the pilot information and then report back on that early January 2023, and then get some guidance as to moving ahead with our next phase of our pilot. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyra. So I'll continue with our updates and timelines on the, can we go back to the previous slide, please? Thank you. The bottom section of this is showing the progress on the survey. And again, the survey, the subrecipient, the monitoring tool subgroup worked on this survey in January through March. And it was presented again to the Subawards and expanded clearinghouse subcommittees for feedback and approval. We incorporated their feedbacks, and right now we are in the process of sending the invitation to the research administration community to answer the survey and provide information. We foresee to analyze the results and provide some feedback to the community on the September meeting for FDP, and then start working on our updates of the tools or working on the several tools that we are proposing on this survey. So stay tuned, and when you receive the survey, please provide answers. It's one per institution. Thank you. So with that, I will pass it on to the Subaward subcommittee.
Next slide, please. Hi, I'm Kari Teacher. I'm one of the Subaward subcommittees co-chairs along with Amanda Humphrey and Kevin Ritchie. I'm from the Institute for Systems Biology in Seattle, Washington. And we're going to start off by talking about the new interim Department of Energy FCY policy. In December of last year, the DOA implemented this new interim FCY policy. It's pretty similar to the Department of Health and Human Services policy, but there are a few differences. But if you take a look at the first 3-4 pages of the financial assistance letter we've referenced there, it provides a pretty nice overview. At this time, though, implementation isn't final, but we anticipate hearing something pretty soon. Just a reminder that the DOA isn't a FDP participant, so just be mindful when you're filling out the templates. For example, before you run the template, you want to select other agency, then you'll be able to add the reference to the financial assistance letter under the FCY section in 2B. It's possible disclosures might be needed from your participants or investigators, so just check with the announcement or the solicitation and it should be clear there. Next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amanda. I'm going to give a brief update about Subaward Attachment 7. As you guys may or may not know, Subaward Attachment 7 is an optional attachment that we have available for our institutions to use. The attachment is related to abbreviated HSD, human subjects data, and basically it's modeled off of our data transfer and use agreement, the DTUA, which is a tool that is operated out of the compliance committee, and there is a data stewardship subcommittee there. So if you want to look at the larger data use agreement tools that we have available, please go over to that section of the website. And then on the FDP forms page, the subaward form page, you'll notice that there's the optional attachment 7 that institutions are able to complete. We started off the attachment last year, we released it, and we've had a pretty good response rate and use by the community, but we're looking to improve and expand its use across the FDP community in particular. And so one of our FDP member institutions that was not able to use attachment 7 said, with just a couple of tweaks, I think our institution would be able to accept it. What do you think if we propose this and see what other institutions think about these changes? And so we're very grateful to Chris McNitt from Penn State for being able to work with her general counsel to pull together some proposed updates to attachment 7, hoping to accelerate adoption of attachment 7. And so we put a survey out there in January with those proposed adjustments. We had it open for a little over a month, and we got 74 total responses, which is a pretty great response rate for this. We got the breakdown is as follows. 30 institutions responded there would be no impact on them. 29 were actually more likely to accept attachment 7. There were 12 that were blank, and we kind of considered these abstentions. So we didn't count them in the final count. And then 2 were less likely to accept, said that they selected that they were less likely to accept attachment 7. However, we believe one of those is a mistake because their comment indicated positive support about how they would now be able to use attachment 7 if we made those changes and updates. So we think that they meant to select the other button. But regardless, that's about a 94% positive response rate for making this adjustment to attachment 7. We did also receive some really great comments from the community, and I just wanted to run through a few of those. And so the first one is suggested to align the terminology of attachment 7 with the subaward template to say subaward as opposed to agreement, and we're going to go ahead with that. And then there was a suggestion that was put in for attachment 7 to be expanded to cover things other than human subjects data. Currently attachment 7 is only applicable if there is an exchange of human subjects data. We've tried to stick really firm to that. Institutions that would like to have some sort of data use agreement to govern the exchange of non-human subjects data should consider other options or alternatives and not use attachment 7 for that. There was a suggestion to include liability language. However, on the face page of the subaward, there is mutual liability language that states each party shall be responsible for its negligent acts or omissions and the negligent acts or omissions of its employees, officers, or directors to the extent allowed by law. And again, we feel that that is sufficient to cover things because there's already that existing subaward agreement between the two entities. So if institutions feel very strongly that they need additional liability or indemnification language, the attachment 7 is not your tool. You should probably issue a separate data use agreement or use the FDP DTUA if that's something that your institution really needs. The additional terms section in attachment 2 should not be used to include additional terms and conditions for attachment 7. If your institution is requiring additional terms and conditions related to the human subjects data, again, we recommend if it's complex and it goes beyond the language that auto-populates on attachment 7 when you select the human subjects data type to perhaps consider another agreement for that. There was a comment about expanding it to have the data only be used for the purpose of the subaward and protect the data from unauthorized use or disclosure. This attachment is specific to the act of award and the data to be shared for the specific project. And so this comment also reflected some concerns about open science and the impact on data sharing. Again, these things need to be done in accordance with the informed consent that was provided by the subjects at the time of their enrollment. So institutions should carefully weigh the balance of what their obligations are under the specific subaward versus what they might have in a particular informed consent, and then balance out whether the language in the subaward and attachment 7 is appropriate for that. And then we are going to add in a section or address in the FAQs, just clarifying that any applicable data sharing plans, now that the NIH is going to require those data sharing plans, should govern parts of the data exchange, and the data will need to be retained in accordance with what's stated there. So we are going to develop some guidance, and that will go into the guidance document rather than changing the terms and conditions. We also got a number of comments regarding archival copies and disposition requirements. And the subaward group is going to have a little note that will pop up on attachment 7 that will indicate that it is okay to include instructions about retention, return, destruction, archival copies in the attachment 7 data description box, because you're not adding additional terms. You are clarifying how that human subjects data is going to be managed and retained at the end of the project. So there's going to be a tooltip that will show something along the lines of this section of the attachment should include a description of the data, specific instructions necessary to complete the transfer of the data, and disposition requirements upon termination or expiration of the subaward. And then see the help text in the one-way FDP DTUA for more detailed descriptions of these requirements. So hopefully this will help our community further use attachment 7 and expand the use of it. So with that, I will move it forward to our next slide, please.
So as a follow-up to the last meeting, Stephanie Stone was kind enough to draft and send out a document providing some technical tips for using the Adobe FDP templates. It was mostly just to get input to the subaward listserv, and once it's finalized, it'll be an attachment to the template user guide document. Thank you, Stephanie, for doing that. And based on something that came up on the listserv regarding the purpose of the parent UEI DUNS field in attachment 3B, the guidance working group drafted a new question for the FAQ guidance document. It hasn't been posted yet, but we plan to have a more substantive edit to coincide with the next version of the template documents. And speaking of the next version of the templates and guidance, we're delaying the updates until the federal regulations are final, probably sometime in 2023. I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to provide an update on this third bullet point here, where the Subawards subcommittee has been working with finance, audit, and costing, in particular, David Schultz, Bill Lambert, Lisa Mosley, and Christy Keene, on the topic of subaward invoices, broadly speaking. And if you may have remembered or even participated in 2 of our listening sessions towards the end of last year, and we had presented some initial responses and reactions to those listening sessions at the January meeting. And so next steps in this effort is going to begin with some targeted outreach to some of the more active participants in those listening sessions. There were a lot of people that were very enthusiastic about this topic and had a lot of good things to say. So we're going to kind of solicit some targeted outreach to form a working group. Volunteers are also welcome if you're hearing about this for the first time. And so let me just say what the goal of the working group is going to be. The goal is to create invoice review standards and guidance that would be available to FDP member institutions and others if they choose. It will be posted on the website. as a reminder, one of the issues we heard in the listening session was, in both listening sessions, was an unusually high percentage of subaward invoices that were being rejected for various reasons, many of which we think we can head off or prevent in the first place if we can produce a revised, updated invoice review standards. And so even though this says checklist, it's not really a checklist. We don't want this to be something that institutions feel like they have to follow, but we want to create a simple and useful tool for the community, 1 to 2 pages on general subaward invoice review standards, hopefully with updated references to federal regulations, hyperlinking to other FDP resources right from that document itself, and embedding rollover and pop-up definitions, and so make it a simple, useful, and functional tool. So be on the lookout for some, maybe through the listserv, or like I said, I'm going to be doing some targeted outreach to individuals that were participating in those listening sessions, and hopefully maybe by the September meeting or shortly thereafter, because this isn't a huge lift, we can produce something helpful for the community as it pertains to subaward invoice review standards. And turn it over to Amanda.
Thank you. That's a very exciting project. So just a quick follow-up on the FFATA survey. We have heard that OMB is interested in further dialogue with us, so we are just waiting for an opportunity to connect and look at how we can partner or support OMB, GSA, or any other agency that's going to be working on any of the follow-up on FFATA, the FFATA reporting results. In addition, Stephanie, Scott, and I are working on pulling together a little report. We have to do some data analysis first, and selfishly, I had not had the time, but I am now taking a Tableau-related course for my degree, and I am going to hopefully be able to use the FFATA survey data in that, and then hopefully I will get an A. And so then we'll be able to hopefully share something in September. The other update we wanted to provide is the IACUC MOU. We actually just heard at the very beginning of this week that that has been approved by the executive committee. And so expect that the MOU and the guidance document that we created in collaboration with the IACUC subcommittee under the compliance committee will be moving forward and will be posted. I'm not sure exactly which site we'll post it to, but wherever we post it, we'll cross-link it with the other committee's webpage so that it's easily locatable by all. Next slide, please.
Since the last meeting's discussion on federally funded research and development centers was so super popular across the FDP community, a joint working group with the contract subcommittee and the subaward subcommittee has been created. The current goal is to put together an issues document and matrix to help provide information and resources to the FDP membership regarding incoming fund negotiations. And so in conjunction with that effort, we sent out a thought exchange to the subawards listserv last week asking for your thoughts on some of the challenges you've experienced in issuing subawards. Additionally, another thought exchange was sent out to the faculty listserv to gather information on how we can better engage with faculty within the FDP, which is a very important piece of what we do. We hope to get enough input on the kind of resources and training materials we should develop for a faculty-oriented Subawards 101 webinar. And both of the thought exchanges are still open, so participate as much as you can. The thought exchange is anonymous. Your comments will be viewed, but not your identity. And there's a rating system. It's very easy to use and it's super, super cool. So we just want to encourage everyone to make comments and return as often as you can. And if you have anything you want to put in the comment section right now about some of the issues that you've experienced with FFRDCs or suggestions about getting faculty engaged in the subaward process, please feel free to do that. We'll take a look, and then we can maybe circle back around later if you folks want to think about it for a little bit.
You guys can also raise your hands and we can call on you too if you're bursting to say something about either of these.
Kari and Amanda, what about, like, could we maybe just read some of the thoughts that we have so far to see if anyone has any reaction to that, or maybe sort of as an advertisement to get in there and either rate some of these thoughts on your own time, or add some different ones that you might feel are missing. So just looking at some of the preliminary results for FFRDCs, just some of the top thoughts that we're getting is not being able to enter a subrecipient relationship with FFRDCs, not knowing about how the FFRDCs themselves operate under their own funding agreements, challenges with period of performance not fitting the traditional start date and end date, having to use FFRDC agreements with quote unquote ugly terms. And I think one of the ugly terms may be advanced payments. Just different types of payment terms here. Some other comments about, more advanced payment terms complicating the annual carry forward process. I could go on, but for the FFRDC thought exchange, those are the thoughts that are starting to come in now. So if anyone has comments, wants to weigh in on that.
There's on the faculty oriented topic, there's actually a great comment about faculty oriented subawards. If they have participation in their SBIR, STTR, or possible COI with companies that they're involved with. Funny story, I am, as many of you know, I am going to be stepping away from my role on the subaward subcommittee, and I will actually be co-chairing the COI subcommittee, and that is actually a fun and exciting project that we are going to be taking up in the coming months. It's just creating some guidance for faculty members. I do just want to mention that in most cases with SBIR, STTRs, in phase 1, most of the FCOI regulations do not apply to the faculty member because there is expected to be overlap that you kind of can't avoid between the company and the institution. So a management plan isn't required, but it is prudent to start thinking about it. And then when you get to phase 2 of those projects, that's when the institution does have to have stuff set up. So a lot of times, I know at least for our institution, we do think about it during phase 1, but we don't actually put anything into place or add terms or anything like that until we get to phase 2.
I could also add that on the faculty-oriented subawards webinar, on that thought exchange, some of the thoughts that are coming in just made me think back to the subaward delays survey from a couple years ago, which began a couple years ago and was wrapped up May of last year. And the thing about that was the number one, and it was a strong number one reason why, as the pass-through entity, what do you believe are the most common reasons that delay issuance of a subaward by your institution? The strong number one response was waiting for the PI to provide documents. So there's something there where hopefully we can leverage this thought exchange, the second bullet point, and increase engagement with faculty and increase communication and come up with concise, helpful tools or language to bridge the gap between administrators' understanding of subawards and faculty understanding of subawards. So I don't want to lose some of the data we had in the subaward delays survey. The whole point of that survey was to look for ways to reduce the delays and try and get under the 45-day industry standard from the project period start date until you actually see your subaward draft. So hopefully there's something we can do here. I'm optimistic with the thought exchange. We can pull on that thread a little bit. and make subawards more clear, more efficient, and easier for faculty as well as administrators.
I'm not seeing any more comments coming in about this. But if you want to email us directly, but just please participate in the thought exchange. We really look forward to hearing from everybody. Next slide, please.
Okay, you have to play the drum roll in your head. So Amanda announced that she was leaving the Subaward subcommittee back at the January meeting, and so everyone should be aware. And we're of course sad to see her go, given how deeply involved and influential she's been on the subcommittee. And Amanda's really led the way and moved numerous working groups along over the years. She's had a hand in the development of a lot of subaward resources over the years and helped FDP members navigate these resources and understand them once they've been posted. She's also, I've seen firsthand Amanda being an expert mediator when institutions had questions or, let's say, differences of opinion over some of the resources and guidance that have been posted, and just handled those discussions in a very professional way. And as she just mentioned, the good news is Amanda is going to be remaining very involved in FDP, moving over to the Conflict of Interest Subcommittee. And she can say more about that in a minute, but it might take her a little while to get fully untangled from the subawards world because she's had her hand involved in so many things. And so I just want to say, Amanda, I really enjoyed working together since I joined the subcommittee a little more than 2 years ago. I really learned a lot from you about subawards and about how FDP works. And I really benefited from your strong leadership as a co-chair of the subcommittee. So good luck in the future. And before we hand it over to you to sign off officially, I wanted to turn it over to Kari as well.
I have learned so much from you, and everyone knows that Amanda is a genuinely delightful person with an exceptional sense of humor, but also genuinely kind and thoughtful. I've appreciated all of our talks behind the scenes, all of your emails and teaching me things. I don't want to say where all the bodies are buried, but just kind of, where all the bits and pieces are that, I'll need to know moving forward. I also appreciated all of the cat stuff. I mean, it's good to bond over these things, and I'm missing that little fluffy tail on the screen in the background. So thank you so much for everything that you've done.
Thank you, Kari and Kevin. It's very, very sweet and very kind. I've really loved working with both of you as well. I always look forward to our meetings because it's great to talk to you guys, both because you have really great thoughts and interesting perspectives, and you're so experienced and knowledgeable and wonderful, but it's also just nice to talk to you as people because you're both wonderful. And I've been honored to share the co-chair time that I've had at FDP with Kari and Kevin, and also with Stephanie Scott and Amanda Haymaker, and who are both also exceptional co-chairs, and also individuals that I've learned a ton from. So I think as I was thinking about what to say today, I thought about how much I really love being part of FDP, because these connections and these opportunities with people at other organizations provide you with chances to kind of stretch and grow, and you learn from individuals that you wouldn't have necessarily had a chance to contact and work so closely with. And it teaches you a lot of executive skills and listening. And I think I've learned to definitely be more creative because I've had contact with people at different institutions with different constraints. So you have to think about how to work with them and how to navigate with them together, and not just make resources that are for one person or one type of institution. And it's funny, I last semester I wrote an MBA paper on innovation, and the entire paper was about my experience being a subaward subcommittee co-chair at FDP, and I have to say it was pretty great. I did get an A on the paper, so that just tells you how great FDP is. But if you're thinking about getting involved as a volunteer or you're on the fence about it, I strongly recommend it, and I endorse it fully for what it's worth. I think it's just a great career development experience. And I think that I am so delighted to be able to welcome Alice Reuther from Columbia University as our new co-chair, because I have to say one of my first experiences in working groups that I worked on was actually involved Alice, and I found that I was learning a ton from her, and it was a great give and take. And so I can't think of a more exciting thing to say than to say that Alice is going to be replacing me as a co-chair, because I think she exhibits all of the wonderful traits that I've come to expect in my FDP co-chairs. She's kind, she's supportive, she's a great listener, and she is somehow able to find the time to get a lot of things done, which is just incredible. And with that, I will turn it over to Alice and let her introduce herself to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I would definitely miss you. I would have loved to be able to work with you on a more regular basis, but the times that we had the opportunity to work together, oh my goodness, I learned so much from you, I have to tell you. And yeah, I second Carrie's and Kevin's words. You are an amazing person, and you're very professional, and you teach a lot. Even when you are not teaching, you teach. So thank you for everything you have done and given to FDP. And I am very grateful to know that you are staying with us in the COI committee. I cannot wait to see all the things that you're going to develop with the committee on the FCOI. So thank you for everything that you are doing for us. And again, my name is Alice Reuther. I come from University of Columbia, and I am very excited to participate in this new role for the FDP. I've been working for the FDP with the FDP since 2016 when I was learning the trade, and I was involved in many working groups, and that's how I learned what I know. So thank you, and looking forward to working with you.
Yeah, and I can just say that we're very excited to welcome Alice. She had, as she just mentioned, has been deeply involved in FDP in the past. And during the interview process for our new co-chair, she really floated some very interesting ideas. And so Alice, Kari and I are very much looking forward to working with you to roll out some of the ideas that you want to implement. And so, yeah, everyone in the Subawards community, please help us extend a warm welcome to Alice, new co-chair of the Subawards subcommittee. And I think we can move to the next slide.
Yeah.
And she will, here's our friendly reminder that Amanda Haymaker pointed out is the traditional penultimate slide in the presentation. And then next slide. Yeah, Alice, you will soon be responding to a lot of inquiries coming into the Subawards at the FDP.org inbox. So we look forward to triaging those inquiries and hopefully providing helpful responses to the community alongside each other. So I think that wraps up this session from our perspective. Any closing thoughts from the rest of the presenters?
I'm not a presenter, but I have a closing thought as your interim executive director. And that is that both the activities involving subawards and the expanded clearinghouse are highly relevant to the FDP for the following reason. We know that the purpose of the FDP is to reduce administrative burden. But at the very beginnings of the FDP, when it was originally the Florida demonstration project, the focus on reducing administrative burden had two prongs to it. One prong was obviously aimed at Washington, D.C. and at the federal agencies, and reducing the administrative burden imposed on us by the various federal agencies. But the second prong was aimed at the individual grantee institutions. And the commitment that an institution makes in joining the FDP is that it will look within itself to see what things are being done that are increasing administrative burden, and will work toward reducing the administrative burdens that come from within our own institutions. And it's clear that the Subawards group and the expanded Clearinghouse group are both encountering some of those problems and are making great headway. So I want to encourage you to continue, but also to remind you that what you're doing is absolutely central to the purpose of the FDP.
And thank you very much for those comments, Dick. And I think that wraps up a very efficient joint expanded Clearinghouse Subaward session. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good to see you.